I want to talk to you about gun control because that's going to be a hot issue coming up, and probably before the end of this term with this president, he's probably going to enact a executive order if he can't get it done anywhere any other way. But gun control is you got to look at the truth of the matter is, and very few crimes, let alone murders, are done by people who are law-abiding gun owners. But one reason the leadership in Japan said we're a little leery of invading America back then was because one of their admirals said, we don't want to do that because behind every bush is a gun. And that's the truth. If you just go with the people who are registered hunters, you have over 4 million people in this country. Now, that doesn't count people who own guns but don't hunt, doesn't include sports shooters or just people who carry for safety's sake. So that makes it the largest army in the world. And anybody would be crazy unless they get the gun control passed and confiscate our guns. They would be crazy to invade this country. Yet our people want to, not our people, but the left wants to take away our guns. And I want to tell you right now that gun control is not the answer. There are enough laws on the books. This has been reported time after time after time. There are enough gun laws on the books right now that if they were simply enforced, but you see, if you enforce them, then there's no need for gun control. And gun control is what this country, what this leadership, this left-leaning Democratic leadership wants. And they want gun control, even to the extent that they phonied up this thing about back in 2011 about all the guns that were killing people in Mexico were coming from America, and we now know that was false. They tried to do a fast and furious, get as many guns across the border from America as possible, and hope a lot of them show up at murders. And they did. They showed up at a murder of one of our border patrol agencies. And to this day, we don't know who ordered it. We don't know. And that's a very, we had hearing after hearing after hearing, which shows you how inept our government is. Because all you have to do is start at the bottom and say, okay, who's the first guy that heard about this at the bottom? This Fast and Furious deal. Well, I did. Well, who told you? Well, this guy did. Well, who told him? And you go right up the ladder. It shouldn't take more than a couple of hours to figure out who issued that order. Yet we did months of hearings and can't find out. Total ineptness in the government. But here's some interesting statistic. If you want to know where gun control is heading, and if you think for a minute this can't happen, let me point out one other thing. One of the best bosom buddies of this president, prior to him becoming president, was a guy that started the Weather Underground. We all know who he was. We've heard all about him. But here's something you probably haven't heard. In the 1960s, when he was forming the Weather Underground, there was an FBI agent that infiltrated the Weather Underground and was at a meeting where Bill Ayers and I guess other Weather Underground people were at this meeting. Don't know who was there, but they were Weather Underground. And one of the things they discussed is when we take over, we may have to eliminate 25 million people. And if you think that's a bluff, if you think that's not real, you're just kidding yourself. And if you think it can't happen, if they confiscate guns in this country, it can very well happen. Let me give you some interesting facts. In 1929, the Soviet Union established gun control. From 1929 to 1953, about 20 million dissidents unable to defend themselves were rounded up and exterminated. So it can happen. In Turkey, in 1911, Turkey established gun control, and from 1915 to 1917, 1.5 million Armenians unable to defend themselves were rounded up and exterminated. In Germany, they established gun control in 1938, and we all know what happened there. From 1939 to 1945, a total of 13 million Jews and others who were unable to defend themselves were rounded up and exterminated. How about China? Established gun control in 1935. From 1948 to 1952, 20 million political descendants unable to defend themselves were rounded up and exterminated. Guatemala, gun control in 1964. From 1964 to 1981, 100,000 Indians were rounded up because they couldn't defend themselves and were exterminated. Uganda established gun control in 1970. And from 1971 until 1979, 300,000 Christians who couldn't defend themselves because of gun control were rounded up and exterminated. Cambodia established gun control in 1956. From 1975 to 1977, 1 million educated people, you might remember the killing fields, were rounded up and exterminated because they couldn't defend themselves. Gun control first, extermination later. 56 million defenseless people were rounded up and exterminated in the 20th century. And you're going, oh, that couldn't happen in this country. It could never happen in this country. Well, I got news for you. You never thought you'd see communists in the White House. Well, they're there. In the 1940s, we were an anti-communist country. Now we've got them in the White House. We've got people who not only do abortions, but kill live babies and butcher them for their parts and their money. And you think this couldn't happen? Well, none of those 56 million people thought it could happen to them. And they let it happen because they didn't have history to show them what can happen. We've got the history. We can show you what happens. And if you're dumb enough to ignore history, then you deserve what's coming down the pike. Now, if you're a bleeding liberal, you probably don't have to worry about anything. But I got news for you. If you're a liberal commentator or if you're a liberal college professor, history has shown us that once these people get in power, they go after you. Why? Because they go after the very people that put them in power, because they know damn good and well that if you turn against them, you can get rid of them. You don't believe me? Look at Argentina. Argentina went after and nationalized all the radio stations. And the radio stations helped the guy get in power. He went after college professors that preached his doctrine. So don't tell me it can't happen in this day and age. It certainly can happen in this day and age. You've got a president that, quite frankly, and I'll call him what he is, he's a liar because I got the video to back it up. I mean, damn near every time he opens his mouth, he's telling a lie. But he stood up after one of these mass murders and said, you know, we know for a fact that everywhere we have tough gun laws, crime goes down. Well, unless you're living in a cave, or unless you've been one of the astronauts that been up in the space capsule up there, you know that's a lie. Because every place that's reported over and over and over and over again that has tough gun control has the highest crime rate. Do you know Washington, D.C. has more police per capita than any place in the world? I think it's 1 for every 200. Now that's counting the FBI and the CIA and the state police and the Capitol Police and the city police and yet it's got the highest crime rate of any city almost. Chicago. Do you realize that in Chicago, during the same period of the Afghan war and the Iraq war, 6,000 Americans lost their lives in a war. 7,000 plus lost their lives in Chicago. And he says, where we have tough gun laws, crime goes down. That's just an out and out lie. And I don't care if he's the president of the United States or who he is, a liar is a liar. And just because he's president does not exempt him from having to tell the truth. And it doesn't exempt him from being called what he is. And I'm sorry, being president doesn't exempt you from the truth. And we just seem to ignore that. But I'm telling you right now, and it could very well happen next year, that you're going to see some attacks in this country. I mean, we all know the Border Patrol, the CIA, the FBI tells us that these terrorists are in the country by the droves. They're here. Well, they're not here to study. They're not here to get jobs. I think that next year you could very well start to see some riots in early summer, not necessarily from terrorists, but it could very well be before the election you see some terrorist attacks. And I want to tell you, if and when that happens, if you're a gun hater, you are going to get down on your knees and pray to God that somebody near you that is a pro-American, pro-gun owner has a gun. Believe me, you will. There's nothing wrong with guns. When, you know, If you want to really stop murders in this country, I can give you the answer in just a few words. Kill murderers. Kill murderers. That's how you get rid of crime. And you do it in a timely manner. Even a dog training manual will tell you that you don't come home after work and spank your dog for something he did in the morning because he doesn't know what he's getting spanked for because you're spanking him hours after it happened. If you kill a killer 30 years down the road, or worse yet, don't kill him after he's been convicted of murder, you're not preventing crime. Punishment is a deterrent. You're not really punishing the guy that did it because he already did it. What you're doing is setting an example for the next guy who may be thinking about doing it. And if you don't think it works, you haven't paid attention to any place that does take care of killers. And I'll give you another example. You know, they don't have a drug problem in Singapore. You know why? You get caught dealing in Singapore, they take you and shoot you in the back of the head. They don't worry about making it easy. They don't worry about nice little drugs that are going to make you feel whoopee and then die. No. And I want to tell you, if they're trying to find a way to kill people humanely, a bullet in the back of the head is probably the simplest, easiest way, because you know darn good and well they're dead when that bullet hits their head. But oh no, we want to be humane. So we kill somebody 30, 40 years after they've killed somebody. No, you kill them after a year. Now I can hear the liberals now, oh my God, you're going to kill some innocent person, somebody that maybe didn't do it. And then they cite all these cases, which I've researched, and most of them, when you look at them, they're guilty of the crime. They didn't get off because they were innocent. They got off on a legal technicality. So they did the crime. They didn't get off because they were innocent. They got off on a legal technicality. Research it. You'll find most of them got off on a legal technicality. Are there some that maybe we're going to kill that didn't do the crime? Probably. But if you save 40,000 lives, is it worth sacrificing one? I would say so. We send young men off to die every year in wars around the world. And in the recent history, they died for nothing because we gave the gains back. And that's very sad. Now, you don't want to kill an innocent person. You scream bloody murder if we accidentally kill one person in maybe 1,000 that was accused of murder. How do you justify that reasoning when you're more than willing to kill innocent babies, not only kill them, but chop up live babies? Live babies. How do you justify not wanting to kill a killer or maybe killing one innocent to save 40,000 people? But you got no problem killing innocent babies? I don't know how you justify it. But that's how you stop crime. You don't stop crime from taking away from law-abiding citizens who there is absolutely no proof that they're the problem. And I'll give you one other example. If you can't stop a 180-pound man from crossing the border with 20 pounds of coke on his back, how the hell are you going to stop somebody from crossing the border with 20 pounds of guns on their back? You seal the border and then tell me about how you're going to control guns. No, it's not about controlling guns. It's about confiscating guns from pro-American men and women, the very people the Constitution said should have guns, just so people like the Democratic leadership and the left wing of the party, which is now communist, progressives, call them whatever you want. You know, a rose by any other name is still a rose. They ain't roses. They're black roses. So call it whatever you want. But the only reason to confiscate from people who have who are law-abiding citizens is because you have something evil in mind. And let's not forget the 56 million defenseless people that have already died this century because of gun control laws. That's all I've got to say. Pay attention. If you like what you hear, pass it on. If you don't, tough. Not much I can do about it.